We will have our moderator, Mr. Sumit Srivastav from PwC India, and we will have Amit Sehgal from Pharynxai, Mr. Mukul Singhal, Pravega, Ms. Pallavi Satsangi, Quantiphi, Mr. Anmol Sethi from BharatP. Let's have some Charcha on AI.
Hello. Thank you, friends, for being here. Probably I'll request some of our colleagues who are standing behind if they want to sit here. We'll try and make it interesting for you. Believe me, you will not repent trying and coming and sitting in front. And the relevance of this topic is very apt for the industry today. I'll start giving with some data points. If you look at 2023, 10 years from now, India is expected to have a population of 1.7 billion people. It's going to overtake China in next 4 to 5 years. And the overall economy is pegged to be around $10 trillion. We'll certainly be among the second or the much larger role to play in not just driving the economy in India, but also be the force for driving the economy across the world. And I'll give you some data points in terms of a recent survey which came out from PwC. It's called a CEO survey. Every year we do that. And we cover around 4,400 people across different countries, out of which 68 were in India. And some interesting data points were that almost 60% of the CEOs felt that unless they transform their organization, they would not be relevant 10 years from now. So the pace at which the consumers are changing their needs and demands, they expect organizations to realign themselves and ensure they're forward-looking in terms of catching up those changes in the way they are expecting services to be delivered. And if I take a view from an India market perspective, almost 93% of the CEOs, they said that digital transformation is one of the critical drivers for them to drive the growth within their organizations. And almost 81% of them also confirmed that they are already investing in either cloud, AI, machine learning, automation kind of technologies. So clearly, if I take a bird's eye view, every leader of an organization clearly understands the importance of digital transformation, and clearly AI machine learning is a critical pivot in driving that growth. With that as a background to that, let me open the segue in terms of putting questions to some of my colleagues out here. And they bring a very varied kind of experience. We've got a couple of our panelists who come from service industry. They've been helping clients drive their digital transformation using AI machine learning technologies. We've also got participation from product companies in terms of how the needs of the industry is changing and what are they trying to do to align that. And we've also got Mukul, who brings a perspective as a VC that how does he look at the changing dynamics of the market while evaluating companies where he's investing and making them future ready and getting the right kind of value for his clients. So with that, probably I'll start off with the first question in terms of how AI has actually played a role as part of digital transformation journey. Clearly to bring a input in terms of confusions, AI, machine learning, automation, digital transformation. Are they all same? Are they different? But clearly the overarching umbrella is around digital transformation, for which AI machine learning is a part of it. Now to start with that question, let me open it up with Anmol to give a perspective around it.
Sure, thanks for having me here. And just to start, I think I'm going to highlight few use cases from the financial space or fintech industry on a very high level. 3 use cases which I see are using ML and AI capabilities, or down the line would be enhancing to get there. The first one is stronger security. You remember there was time when we used to use our passwords to log into our digital banking, eventually evolved to fingerprints, then face recognitions, now speech is coming into play. So speech recognition to verify whether that person is the one who's logging in. So these are one of the use cases. The second one which I would highlight would be fraud risk management, where opening up to understand which is a possible fraudulent case in the banking system, historical patterns, flags, breaching of thresholds, or coming into play where one of the checks that usually fintech and financial institutions imply are breaking now and then. Then the Third one would be customer satisfaction. In this, I would want to highlight conversational IVRs, and then also chatbots, which can give you 24/7 support, and which can also be embedded with more frequently asked questions, not just random like 10 ones, 10 or 15, which usually everywhere you find it. But as we are collecting more and more data, as we get to know like what people are asking, what kind of questions are coming up, we can evolve them, feed into our conversational IVRs and make it more interactive and give a good customer experience. One more thing we can highlight is, I think a lot of people would have encountered here is when you call up call centers, and if even if you have a genuine request or not, and when you engage with them and the kind of replies you get, you're kind of disappointed and you say that you got a very bad experience. This whole thing can go away when this is automated to conversational IVRs. So that biases of human interaction and how the other person is corresponding or listening to you could also go away. So these are like, few use cases which I think are popping up and evolving with time.
Maybe, a very interesting point which Anmol talked about, conversational AI, and how it can be adopted for servicing customer base. And if you look at the demographics of India as a country, you've got languages which change every 100 kilometers you go about. And for a lot of organizations, financial industry, he talked about as an example, probably I'm changing the flow, and I want to bring in Amit here to say that he runs a product company in conversational AI. And when the customer need is that the language, I want to use conversational AI platforms for servicing my customers at large. They are spread across different states. They talk so many different languages. How do I create a solution which can cater to my such vast kind of customer base which I have? Probably, Amit, you want to share some thoughts around it?
Thanks, Sumit. So, so thanks to ChatGPT, conversational AI is suddenly back into vogue, right? It's a buzzword right now. But the model, as it might seem, has very practical difficulties when landed in India. And of course, now the spread is moving faster. Chatbots, WhatsApp bots are small examples of that. But even in terms of call centers now, that's one of the major applications that's coming up. And across the industry, be it healthcare, be it travel, the number of queries, because there's a direct use case or direct business case of the huge scaling up, the benefit that it's had. But like you very rightly pointed out, there are challenges. I would like to highlight two things here. So one is conversational AI, like we understand in terms of using Siri and the Google assistants and the ones that you have used, Alexa. But then there are very specific use cases. One we implemented using call actions, the conversational actions for Google Assistant for one of the customers. And we actually built a whole sales reporting bot on that. That actually had very phenomenal results. But the interesting part was when we launched it, it was a pan-India launch. And even though we had customized the keywords there, right, it was for one of the India's largest D2H brand. And when they called out those brand, even the way of speaking, so instead of sure, some people would pronounce sir. And that itself created a problem, right? And we had to retrain the bot to understand the variations in that. Second, coming to the language that you said, the barriers. Another problem is in terms of lingo that's specifically used. We did on a conversational AI, we did a voice-based survey for a major telecom operator in India. This was for UP East. And once it was launched there, so one of the questions there was, did your job get done when you went to our support center? So one of the guys, so the response typically based on Ganta. Now, what do we make of Ganta, right? Typically, that's not either you'll say it was done, it was not done. So did your job get done? Ganta. Now, so these are typically challenges that you face once you come to that, and then you pick up those and train the bot. But thing is, it's becoming, the pace of learning is becoming faster. And the interest in conversational AI has only driven that. There are a number of companies which are working. I would think from an industry perspective, of course, I would say data modeling is a proprietary thing, but if somewhere we can bring up a common base, I think it will suit the whole industry as a move forward much faster.
And maybe interesting thing, I've seen the evolution of conversational technologies. The maturity of those technologies over the last 3-4 years have increased by multiple folds. And I see that if you look at any technology capabilities enhancement, it is a combination of investments going in and industry use cases getting looked at. Taking a view from a customer standpoint today, if anybody is looking at digital transformation, conversational AI is a critical lever for them when they get into the planning side. So clearly the demand part is set in there. Thanks to some of these fundings which we have seen, VCs putting in money into these companies, we have seen that they have been able to pump in money to create technology solutions which are more closer to the kind of real problems which people and Amit just shared about. Now with that, let me bring Mukul here. He is the one who invests money into companies which are actually creating these tech stacks for the use of the industry. Mukul, what has been the evolution, what you have seen over the last few years in terms of the technologies and how they are scaling up to the need of the customers?
Sure, thanks, Sumit. So I think AI and digital transformations both are fairly broad words, tough to define. And at least in our fund, we started the AI journey, backing AI companies, digital transformation journey sometime 7-8 years back, around 2015-16. But back then, most of the investments went into obviously using AI, but solving business problems for market like US. Those were the initial starting points. And we have been fairly happy both from the success of the talent, what we have been able to produce as a country, and both the kind of problems have been able to solve. And just to give you an example from a journey of evolution, the starting point was very, let's say, inward-looking data, not very sensitive data. Regulatory-wise, it's clean. Productivity tools. So something like we backed a company which was doing a compliance automation for pharma manufacturing floor, isn't it? So not a very customer-sensitive data, but not done in prior history using AI, ML, and you solve that compliance problem, because compliance globally is becoming, in every industry, is becoming a very big issue. Now that good part is those kind of problem statements has started getting solved even for the Indian markets. So that's the evolution one which has happened, that simple data, inward-looking data, productivity data, we are solving. And AI bots, in some sense, I put it in that direction only. Obviously, there is a customer data because there is an interaction involved to it, but it's still yet less sensitive. I think what right now, last 2-3 years, 4 years, as VCs, we are investing behind large, more data sets. It can be financial services transaction data, something like BharatP. It can be healthcare data and user healthcare data. And that data has 2-3 nature to it. One, it's very millions and trillions of records. Financial data at a transaction level is fairly complex. Second, you end up in catering to large enterprises. So if you are dealing with financial services data, and then invariably, somewhere or the other, you will start working with a bank. Let's say if you're working with the ICC Bank or SDFC Bank, which is a 50, 100, $150 billion market cap company, then the regulatory climate, the regulation of the country, the framework around regulation compliance becomes far more complex and challenging. So in that, I think 2 things we have noticed from a company success perspective. One, obviously the technology, your ability to put platform, that's a table stakes. If you don't have a technology strength, then you can't do it. But your ability to understand and navigate the regulatory and the big enterprise climate is also very, very important. If you are very naive in terms of understanding the regulation, in understanding how do you solve it in a big enterprise use case, then it becomes a no-go. So I think good part is we are moving from simpler problem, less data, internal data, to external data, sensitive data, but also regulatory climate is becoming a lot more, it influenced the company building, let me put it this way. Positive or negative, I don't know, but it influenced the company building journey.
And maybe, I'm very keen to share another data point from one of the conversations. Today, regulators are so very keenly clued to the kind of changes which is happening in the tech space and what kind of policy procedures they have to transform to ensure that they enable that. And I was in a global conference and we were having a conversation where people said that typically government lags the industry by 10 years in terms of formulating policies in accordance to what the industry requires. But today, regulators globally, not just I'm referring it to India, understand that for industry to thrive, they have to be more forthcoming in making policies and procedures in accordance to what the business needs and what the technology can provide. And in many of these business areas, or I would say ministry wise, you will see that gap has reduced. In certain areas, rather government is even more forthcoming in terms of saying that how I can leverage technology as part of the overall digital transformation in a particular, I would say, smart city initiative, what they're talking about. Many of them, and that's where we've seen a huge change. And I think so even in this conversation today, I was very, surprised to see a lot of people from the government are there talking about and sharing their views, which actually brings the importance of government as well as businesses working together to drive this agenda. Now, probably I wanted to bring in Pallavi. Everybody talked about, we touched upon conversational AI, financial services. For India to be a $10 trillion economy, and the way everybody says, India has to ensure that the manufacturing sector comes up big time. We have to be the other alternative to China by providing in the right kind of supply chain around it. And Pallavi has spent a lot of time helping manufacturing sector clients talk about and drive the digital transformation. So I want to call her in and share her experiences of sharing digital transformation initiatives in the manufacturing sector.
Thanks, Sumit. So, all right, see, we see about the AI applications, right? On a very macro level, it falls under one of the 4 pillars. You either use your AI ML to make your product better, or you use your AI ML to make your customer journey less frictionless. You apply your AI ML basically to make your business autonomous. And the 4th one is you use your AI ML in order to, understand your risk, your threats, your frauds, and things like that. Now, to bring up one particular use case in manufacturing, we all know about our traditional, service centers wherein you take your cars to get them serviced. Now, for a person like me, unless and until they keep calling me 101 times, I don't take my car for servicing. Or even if my car shuts down in the middle of the road, I feel there's no problem. It's just going to start on its own, sort of a thing. So this is where we for one of our clients, which are into this automobile manufacturing space, we had designed them a solution, which is, I think many of us have heard of it. It's around predictive maintenance, wherein you have the sensors placed in your cars, and it's going to predict which particular part is going to need a replacement, it's going to need a service, a fix, or maybe a completely change in that particular part. So that actually worked out wonderfully. We just were not able to work it out at a POC level, but were actually able to scale it up across, for their different models of cars, across their different geographical locations and things like that. Now, there were 2 things that happened with that. The client wanted to make his product smarter. In this case, he made his car smarter. And second thing, he also went on to make his customer experience less frictionless, because now the customer knows when exactly, for which part he needs to go to the service center. So that unnecessary trips to the service centers had been reduced, and more saddening part is, in case the part is completely defective, the customer has to go there and shell out that extra money from his pocket, which is definitely not desirable. So yes, I think this was one of the use cases that I would like to present, and this was just a part of it. Now, if you think from the automobile manufacturing part, yes, he was able to adopt himself to the AI/ML field. But that being said, what about his suppliers? And what about his other vendors and partners who are providing him that software services, right? They themselves also had to change, whether in terms of the sensors they were building, the type of software that they were presenting, this particular automobile manufacturer. So in and all, he was able to create that ecosystem wherein, that he, along with his partners and his suppliers, were able to completely drift into adopting the AI, AI/ML solutioning as a whole approach.
Maybe I'll share an experience of meeting one of the automobile industry head running operations in multiple parts of the country. And the CEO mentioned to me, he said, Sumit, we did an internal study, and we realized that they had majority of their vehicles were in the passenger car segment for private use, not for the taxis. And they realized that the study said that the average utilization of a private vehicle is less than 2%. People like you and me, we drive a car, park it in the office, and then take it back in the evening. And with autonomous vehicles coming in some shape or form, their view was this utilization is going to change from 2% to 8 to 10%. And while there are studies which says even higher. What will be the impact on the automobile industry that today, and if you look at Delhi, as an example, as many number of people, those many number of vehicles. But that will go down to say that I can use the same car, go to my office, that car comes back, my wife can use it, my kids can use that. Hence, the sale of the car is going to only go down with time rather than doing more sales. So what they were building is, they said our revenue is largely going to pivot towards services revenue rather than actually the car sales revenue. And they said, how do we bring in many of these data points which the machine or the car is generating to bring insights. I can sell them the kind of music they would like to read, to do the kind of packages in terms of how the servicing is going to be provided in a more effective manner and drive revenue out of it. Because as you look at how the consumer behavior is getting changed, it will also lead to changing business models and service models also, revenue models which will come in, which could be very sector specific itself. Now with that, probably, just to bring a perspective around it, probably let me move to the next point of conversation which I want to put forward to my panelists is we've, clearly digital transformation, I think so, across board, across sectors, organizations have been taking that forward. That's a well-established fact. Everybody is putting money in some shape and form. But there are challenges in that. It's not that it's the easy road. You say, I want to start a digital transformation and everything goes well. There are a lot of kind of challenges. And we thought, let's hear from our panelists in terms of what kind of challenges they have seen either at their organization or servicing their clients while they have been trying to scale a digital transformation leveraging AI machine learning models. So maybe I'll start in the same order with Anmol.
Sure. I think one of the challenges from a reporting perspective that I had when I joined BharatP was that we wanted to get into the real-time decision-making attribute to get the data ready in the shape, have a time-based refresh, and I can make decisions instantaneously. So I was using one of the tools which was not fulfilling the criteria and what I was trying to do. As we are on G Stack and we moved to Looker, Looker was able to answer those questions in terms of the data it can handle, on the fly. So that was one of the use cases. The second one was BharatP is into lending and defining the lendable base or the pockets or the areas which are open where we can go and lend. We have some pin codes which are defined as red. For example, CP comes into one pin code and the whole district is flagged as red. I'm giving an example, right? But that does not define that the whole pin code is red. There are some pockets, there are some geo-hash locations which are red. How do we get into the decision-making part where we can leverage machine learning, AI spaces, or capabilities, and open up those pockets for us to be able to jump in and lend? So these were some of the problems that we catered, and we're working very, I would say the technology or the route that we have taken is helping us cater that. Then the third one was the fraud anticipation. Like we were using heuristic models. We are not able to anticipate which merchant would be committing fraud because we deal into the merchant segments. And having that granularity of data, understanding what the behavior patterns are, because banks don't lend them, but we go and lend them. And to understand and have the right risk score mechanisms that we built in-house through machine learning and AI spaces is helping us. And it would be shocking to reveal that we have very low fraud rate in comparison to the banks now. So, which is, I think, tremendous. So yeah, these are from some of the challenges which we have fought over time.
And very interestingly, Anmol talked about data at least 5 times out here. And I just want to bring an anecdote here. I was hearing one of the bureaucrats from financial industry talking about to the bankers, and he said that everybody says I'm very tech savvy, I've gotten core banking transformation, and I'm able to harness data to bring right kind of products. And he said, when I ask all of these bankers to tell me how many accounts you have, give me your unique customer numbers. He said, if I do an aggregation of all of that, probably the population of India is 3 times what we are counting today. Because many times active, inactive customers, multiple products being sold, and a lot of the digital transformation initiatives bringing insights is actually based on data. But the reality of the day is, if you look at any organization, getting the golden source of data in the most effective manner is also one of the biggest challenges. probably a lot of organizations are saying, I want to take ahead a digital transformation initiative. While I'm doing that, I'm also trying to solve my data problem. There is no magic wand out here which can solve that problem effectively. There are different ways and means of how probably we've seen organizations trying out that model. Maybe we'll keep it as a topic for a later conversation, but clearly the right kind of data sets is a very critical, I would say, base level required for driving your digital transformation. Let me, Amit, why don't you share some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, since you referred to data about training the models, I went back to one of the first lectures I had on computer science, I mean ages back. And the first, I still remember the word, it was called GIGO. The first word that was taught to us, it was garbage in, garbage out. And I think that's still true for all the computer industry, especially more so for ML AI models, right? So data obviously is the key ingredient. In fact, for conversational AI, it's all about data modeling. The number of languages, the number of accents that are there, that anyway is the key, how much you can train. There are two specific things that I just wanted to mention here. One was, if you're going for an industry, every industry we learned has a particular lingo in what they use. For example, you were doing a small project for an FMCG on conversational AI, and when we rolled it out, typically the purchases are made not in, nobody would go and, so Surf has become $1 billion brand. Now you can imagine, at least not a billion, but there are a million ways people would call out for Surf, right? Somebody, so a small packet, a small sachet of Surf, typically they'll say chota nila dena. Now it has no connotation to Surf or even the value. So how do you aggregate, I mean, what is being asked? So the idea is that besides the language models in terms of accents and other things, you also need to understand the lingo of the industry you are dealing with. So, and that's what makes scaling extremely challenging, because you cannot cater to multiple industries. The model that you build has to be specific to one or two industries, because that's where you would scale. In fact, to accommodate language itself is a big problem. To accommodate lingos in a particular industry would itself take a lifetime. So that's one. And that's where obviously what I think Mukul was referring to as the value of the data that a particular sector generates. Second thing that I would say is, which we realize becomes very important is, see, in conversational AI, it's all about engaging the customer. How well the conversation flows, right? As human being, I can anticipate where the conversation is going. I can watch you, I can understand and maybe try to mold, soften my stand. Or, I mean, here there's a voice that is going. We try to bring in some variation in terms of tone and right pitch, but there is only so much that you can do. But what is then interesting is what we call in this parlance is VUI. So just like you go onto web and you have a UI, or now UX, UI, kind of how you experience a web, right? How does it keep you engaged and attractive and what to present? In voice parlance, it's only something that you're hearing. And it's called VUI, voice user interface. So what we also realized was that also changes once you start scaling up. So if you do a small deployment for a couple of, say, 100 people, the voice UI model is very different, because then you don't cater to the complexities that would coming up. But if you cater to a large superset, then the conversation has to be very pointed. You have to give him pointers as to what you are expecting, because as human, I can actually say anything, right? But if I'm expecting an answer in yes or no, then I would try to prompt key, you want this, yes or no. Otherwise, sometimes you would even keep it open-ended if it's a small audience, and maybe attract more value, because there's a processing cost at the back end, right? So for a small audience, you would want an open feedback to see where it's going. But if it's a larger data set, you don't want to put all that cost in terms of processing. So you want to try to get more specific as to the kind of answer you're looking for. And then we realize the VUI also changes as you keep on scaling. So yeah, essentially those two key learnings.
Maybe let's also hear views from Pallavi here, any from a different sectors.
Sure. I think there's a lot of focus that went on data. So I'll just, yes, data is important. So I'll make it in one line. In the data science community, we say stupid data, stupider model. It's like that. So that important is data. It's not just the data availability, but it's the data continuity, especially when you're planning to scale up your applications. It's a different scenario when you're trying to do a POC. You know, a 1 year's worth of data is sufficient for you. But when you're trying to scale it up and make it productionized based across various different geographical locations, it's a different ball of game. I'll just stop at data for that. The second one that I have recurrently seen is your model interpretation. I'll not make it very technical, but this especially applies in financial and in healthcare sectors, because there are a lot of legal implications around it. you go to the client giving with your solution, they ask, why this? Why did the model say this? What features did it take in? So there should be some way how you can explain as to what the model did and why the model did so, which is your explainable AI. The one more aspect of it is when you deploy your AI, it's not silos, right? You're supposed to integrate it with your legacy applications. And every organization, be it you belong to the organization or your clients, they have their existing applications, which more or less many of the times are outdated. So how do you deploy your AI solution, or how do you apply your entire data flow on legacy systems? So that is one recurring aspect that, at least in the projects that I have worked on, is what I've seen, wherein before you develop or you deploy your applications, ensure that your legacy systems are at least not that outdated and up to that mark wherein you can sort of go ahead with your solutioning. One last thing would be, as an organization, if you plan to adopt AI, please ensure that the folks on grounds are also aware, they're ramped up, and they know what's going on in the system. Once you finish your implementation and you ask them to go ahead and use it, they will not. They will definitely have repercussions because they don't understand what's going on. So whether it is in ideation stage or solutioning stage or development or deploying stage, try to involve the people on ground so that they are also aware and they can also make the shift. They can also go ahead with your vision that you have taking your AI journey. I think that's pretty much.
Maybe, I just want to highlight one more point in terms of cost of technology. If you look at any adoption at a larger scale which has happened, let's look at mobile penetration. The cost of mobile phones, earlier it started with 32 rupees per minute incoming calls as well. And today look at the kind of cost of handsets as well as the service which is being provided has really fueled the kind of adoption out here. If you look at, I would say 3D printing, the initial, I would say entry barriers for 3D printing was A, the cost of the 3D printer, and B, the kind of cost of the raw materials for various produce to be done. Gradually over X number of years with more different materials being used in, today I was very surprised to see that people in colleges are doing projects where they're doing 3D printing of some of the models. Largely so because today I can buy a printer, 3D printer as low as 25,000 rupees as well. So clearly cost of technology also plays an important role. And I now want to bring in Mukul to say, as a VC guy, how have you seen the cost of technology effectively getting played out to enable digital transformation? Any thoughts or views we want to share on that?
No, pretty much same examples. Sumit, cost of technology has definitely gone down and will keep going down. Like 10 years back, we thought that a smartphone will pick up when the cost of a smartphone will come to $50 or so, and pretty much it happened. The smartphone cost, and if you take even the circular economy into picture, that what is a second hand or third hand, because there is no data to back it, what a third hand smartphone costs. But that has pretty much fueled the smartphone penetration, and then Jio did what it did to the mobile internet. So cost of technology will keep going down. Having said that, what we also realized that building AI companies historically has been expensive, and all of what you said, that data annotation cost, I don't know, data annotation cost will go down or go up because labor costs will keep increasing. Data collection cost is always been a challenge, and 6-7 years back we were naive to think that AI companies will be like product companies having 70-80% gross margin, but so far it has not been the case. And most of the times clients don't understand why that cost is, and they don't want to pay because they just see the model which has been after 2 years of hard work, hard data collection, and they may not be willing to pay. So building AI companies historically has been expensive. So as founders, you have to be smart enough. How do you bootstrap your initial AI clients? Be it do it big enterprises, the data collection has to be automatic in some fashion. If you start paying for the data and that iteration loop is happening on your paid data and annotation is paid, collection is paid, then it's a very tough bootstrap journey. And cost of compliance and AI has increased. At least as a board member and shareholder, we lose sleep on compliance because in growth companies where millions of transactions are coming, I do lose my sleep that is there a compliance issue hanging, is there a security issue hanging. So that cost has been ever increasing. There's a lot more pressure from shareholders on that cost. So these are the challenges. I don't know the answer. I am sure that entrepreneurs bring the answers. We don't bring the answers for sure. But eventually tech costs will go down. Eventually tech costs will go down.
Thanks, Mukul. This was interesting insights, and you talked about compliance. You know, I've been into conversations where organizations have said, I've automated the entire loans processing in my organization, but you know, I have a regulation which says that I can't do discrimination while providing loans. And if somebody files a case to say that, you know, my loan got rejected for what reason, how do I say it was done by an AI ML model? You know, I need to have a human reviewing it. And they said that because of regulations, I need to bring in the right kind of controls to say I can't apply it everywhere. I have to look at how the guidelines or the rules of the land apply and where do I put that across. So, you know, it's not that you say I've got a magic wand and let's put AI ML everywhere what I do. You know, there are challenges in terms of what is possible, not possible. I think so there is a lot of conversation happening around in terms of responsible AI. Again, a separate topic for conversation to say where you should apply and where not. In certain, I would say, regulated industries where there are unions as well, people have been raising concerns to say whether it is going to bring in lack of employment. Again, a separate conversation, enough data points to talk about how digital transformation, AI machine learning, particularly in a country like India, has led to more employment generation rather than reduction. But again, it is not homogeneous across sectors. The impact across different sectors is also very different. So just giving you certain pointers in terms of challenges which could be different from industry to industry. Now, you know, a very interesting thing, I think so everybody, while we were planning for the session, sitting in the room next to this one, everybody was unanimous, digital transformation is the way to go. While there are challenges, but there are ways to solve that problem. But we thought at every board level, a lot of companies have to answer that what is my return on investment. And my good friend Anmol here, he holds a very interesting title, Measurement and Insights Lead at BharatP. You're like, okay, you measure the benefits and insights from a transformation. Then let me open this segue of a question to invite him to share his views of what is being done in his experience to measure the benefits from a digital transformation using AI machine learning.
Sure, definitely it's a hot topic. I just want to summarize, like there are very different key components to it. Like you can't just answer this question on a very high scale, or like you have to get into the tactical depth to understand what the returns are, right? But let's just open it wide. If I were to approach a problem, or if I'm given a use case that I have to build a measurement framework for this kind of a thing which we are enabling or initiating, I look into three perspectives. One is enterprise level. Second is I go into the firm level, or I would say function level. Third is the tactical level, right? So three components I break into. Then I look into what are the signals who are feeding into those three components or the layers. And finally link it up to the KPIs, which will be defining that if you are doing this or your objective is this, and you're trying to achieve, let's take an example. I would say there is you want to increase customer interaction, right, with either whatever industry you're catering. Then the signal I would be looking into is that how frequently or what is the adoption or the screen time or how frequent logins do people come into the website or the app. And then when I have to dive deeper into what the KPIs are, what is my session duration? How many times a person is going onto my resources page? How many times they're hitting those CTAs which are directly corresponding to the interaction or the consuming attribute of the resources that I've kept there. So this is like one example. But yes, coming back to the measurement, you have to look into what the ROIs are when you're getting into the digital business transformation, which is a very different example to what I gave. You also have to keep in mind what the speed to market is, what the adoption of that transformation could be, because no matter you're linking up the right dots, but if there is no adoption, there is no speed to market, there is no scalability, everything will fall flat, and there would not be any ROI that you can quantify with, right? So again, a very broad topic. We're definitely happy to have a conversation one-to-one and link it up and talk more about it afterwards.
And maybe the problem becomes even bigger when you're talking about conversational platforms. And me and Amit, we were talking, and I said that I've heard many times when you're putting in a conversational platform for your employees, for customer facing, it's a bit easier to measure. You're putting it for your employees to say that how the attrition rate has gone down. And clients would say when the great resignation wave was at peak, they're saying we have invested in these technologies, but I still have resignations. So what is my ROI? So how do you counter such of these questions? Maybe keen to hear examples from Amit with his conversational AI expert.
Yeah, so that is, internal employee ROI is obviously a challenge. And frankly, we have not been able to develop a matrix for it. What we try to do is in terms of, for example, we have launched a humanoid bot for training. It's a digital bot, and that it combines, so typically in a classroom, you have a teacher kind of giving you a training. And otherwise, the second way of training is you go over mundane videos, and right. But the advantage is those videos you can go over any number of times, right? But the content will still remain the same. A teacher will explain things to you. You can stop and ask questions. So we try to combine both using conversational AI. So it's a training bot that gives you training, and you can stop the bot and ask questions, and you would get a response, and that's a flow. So when we try to take it to the companies, the first thing was obviously around fear of jobs, right? We'll lose our jobs and all. We said, no, it's not to replace anybody, it's just to assist and help you improve the ROI, the productivity. It will obviously bring your cost down because your infrastructure requirements go down. It's a pan-India operation. You don't, right now you have people in multiple languages, right? You don't need people in all the, even if you do, see, his time is precious. So that time can be used for more for answering the questions rather than going over the mundane content which can be covered by the bot. So, but it's a difficult conversation. It's a difficult sell. It's not, there is no direct, when you ask somebody, when they ask us to put a number to that, it's difficult. We have not been able to do that because you can't directly say it will replace so many people. That itself raises a big flag. So it's not about drilling, it's about the value it adds. It brings about the speed at which people learn. But again, to quantify that, yeah, we have done some pilots, we have those numbers, but yeah, to put a saying this is the ROI and you would recover in so many days, it's a difficult question.
I heard a very interesting example at one of the boards where they said that if you are trying to teach swimming to your child, you don't calculate an ROI that my child is going to win an Olympic medal. It is also trying to bring new skills and make my child ready for enabling with multiple kind of skills. And a lot of organizations being very conscious to say that I cannot measure everything. There are certain tangible but non-tangible benefits as well. But in order to make my organizations fit for growth, being more future ready, we need to effectively invest in some of these technologies and transform the way, because others are making that change. I will be left behind and I can't be still driving on a bullock cart when everybody is using vehicles around it. Probably just being conscious of time. And sorry, I'll now move on to the last segue in terms of, we want to talk about people sitting out here. You may be looking at digital transformation initiatives at different stages of the transformation journey within your organization. So people and my fellow panelists as practitioners, what would be their one guidance or a warning to you as you are starting a digital transformation journey? Let me start with Pallavi now.
Okay, is it okay if I give two? All right, fine. The first one, which you spoke a lot, is around your data infrastructure. Before you dig in or jump into this journey, ensure you have a strong infrastructure of your data, be it in terms of your data storage, access, implementation, data flow, and things like that. The second is please invest a good amount of time and money in ramping up your technical staff. That is very, very important, because every single day we come up with new problem statements in the market and new solutions around it. And the folks, your data scientists, your data engineers, or machine learning engineers have to be ramped up, have to be upskilled at that level to identify the potential problems and also to come up with solutions around it. So I think these are the two key takeaways or the guidance points that I would like to give folks who want to embark on this journey.
Mukul, you want to? Yep. Mine is very, if you are trying to start up and trying to be entrepreneur in this area, then be very clear about your problem statement and how do you bootstrap for 2 years at least. You will not have infinite capital or infinite leeway. You'll have couple of years to build it up. So be very clear about your problem statement.
Amit?
So for me, see, digital transformation is all about people and their journey. So decisions often are taken at the top because these are high investment games, but the effect and the challenges and the execution actually percolates throughout the ladder. So it's the communication and how do you take those people along, how do you seek their support, and kind of also make them aware that it's not going to impact negatively is, I think, extremely important.
From my side, I think the focus should be customer experience. Like, I know we are trying to digitally transform, collect, have the data in the right form, have a right data architecture, have everything implemented for real time, what the action or the outcome is to have a good customer experience. So understanding from a customer experience perspective, one should be planning the digital transformation. So currently we might be, like catering one size fits all kind of a scenario. Right, we build something, a product or whatever is fitting every kind of a person, but I would want to get to the depth of one-to-one personalization, even if you're using ML, AI spaces, to be able to identify and deliver like the best-in-class experience is where all the companies are moving towards. So keeping a customer perspective when you're planning everything will give you an edge, a competitive edge.
And maybe just to also bring a point from my side, I would say that keeping governance in the foresight while you are setting up a program. Many a times I have seen in organizations, governance is an afterthought. It's like you're saying that, I'm running an airport and I don't have a tower which controls which plane is landing at what height they are flying itself. It's going to be chaotic. A lot of matured organizations, very surprisingly, I've seen that they had brought in these technologies, and suddenly there is a regulator which comes and audits certain processes and said that you're making decisions based on certain AI ML models, doesn't follow the rule of the land, what kind of risk your organization is getting into because of some of these automations or models what you are running, and people are tight-lipped. They don't know what the answer is. So this is a journey. You need to ensure that while you are setting up this journey, one is get the governance right. You need to have a different structure in place to run a model like that. The normal structure of how organizations would say, I had a CIO, COO, or a CEO, that model would not be feasible to run this. Many organizations we've seen, chief digital officer is a new role, directly reporting to the CEO who drives this. It is different than a CIO role itself, because it's closely working with the operations head, with the business head, with the CEO to drive the benefits around it. So the governance has to be there, rightly put. The structure of the organizations has to be rightly set to ensure that they can drive that kind of growth. And yes, you need to look at the tech stack as well to see how you are able to support those kind of initiatives and have a view of a tech stack, not just from a year one, year two perspective, but more like a roadmap. Because this is going to be a continuous journey for organizations. When you embark, you're going to continue on that for decades to come forward. But an opportunity which nobody can afford to miss today. If you do not reinvent yourself, as I said, one of the data points, 60% of the CEOs felt that they will not be relevant 10 years from now itself. So I think so that's what as a panel we wanted to bring forward to all of you. You will find we made segues into certain topics which I felt is also being covered in different sections within today and tomorrow, so you can make use of the time and attend to those sessions as well. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, do we have a few minutes? We can take up few questions as well. Okay, that's fine. So any questions you can take up later as well. Thank you so much for your time.